At my wedding, everything was perfect until my maid of honor stood up during the ceremony and announced she was pregnant with my husband's baby. The guests gasped. I smiled and did this. 3 hours later, she'd be begging me not to press charges. But let me back up, because the story isn't really about the wedding, it's about the year of lies that led up to it. Sophia had been my best friend since college. We met in our sophomore dorm, bonded over late-night study sessions and terrible cafeteria coffee. She was the kind of friend who remembered your birthday, brought you soup when you were sick, and knew exactly what to say when your world was falling apart. Or at least, that's who I thought she was. When I got engaged to Marcus last year, she was the first person I called. She screamed so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "I'm so happy for you," she said. "You two are perfect together. This is going to be the most beautiful wedding ever." I asked her to be my maid of honor on the spot. She cried actual tears. The planning process was intense, but Sophia was there for everything: dress shopping, venue visits, cake tastings. She had opinions about everything and wasn't shy about sharing them. "That venue is too dark," she'd say, or "that dress doesn't show off your figure." I trusted her judgment completely. She had great taste, and more importantly, I thought she wanted what was best for me. Marcus worked long hours at his law firm, so Sophia ended up handling a lot of the coordination. She'd text him directly about vendor appointments, timeline details, seating arrangements. Don't worry, she'd tell me when I felt guilty about him missing another planning session. I'll keep him in the loop. That's what best friends are for. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs. The way she'd light up when Marcus entered the room. How she always found excuses to hug him a little too long. The inside jokes they started developing. The way she'd mention him in conversations that had nothing to do with the wedding. But I was busy, between work, wedding planning, and trying to maintain some semblance of a social life. I was exhausted most days. I was grateful to have someone I trusted handling the details. Sophia seemed to thrive on it. She'd send me updates constantly, photos from vendor meetings, screenshots of conversations with Marcus. "Your fiancé is so involved," she'd gush. Most guys couldn't care less about centerpieces. The first red flag should have been the bachelorette party. Sophia planned the whole thing. A weekend in Miami, but the night before we left, she called me crying. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I'm getting sick. I think it's food poisoning. I can't travel." I was disappointed but not suspicious. These things happen. Except she wasn't sick. I found out later she'd spent that weekend with Marcus while I was in Miami with my other bridesmaids, having a mediocre time without my maid of honor. They told everyone I'd gone to a spa for the weekend to de-stress before the wedding. Convenient cover story. The second red flag was her behavior in the weeks leading up to the wedding. She became obsessed with wedding timeline details, specifically when Marcus and I would see each other before the ceremony. "You can't see him the morning of," she insisted. "It's bad luck. I'll coordinate with him directly." She volunteered to handle his getting ready photos, to make sure his groomsmen were on schedule, to personally deliver his boutonniere. I thought she was being thoughtful. Actually, she was being strategic. The morning of my wedding, I woke up feeling nervous but happy. Sophia arrived at my bridal suite early, carrying coffee and pastries. She seemed jittery, more excited than usual. "This is it," she kept saying. "This is your big day." She helped me into my dress, did my makeup, held my bouquet while I practiced my vows one last time. "You look perfect," she said, and for a moment, her expression was strange. Not happy strange, something else, but then she smiled, and I forgot about it. The ceremony was at a beautiful vineyard, golden afternoon light filtering through the trees. I walked down the aisle feeling like I was floating. Marcus looked handsome in his tuxedo, beaming as I approached. Our families filled the chairs, friends scattered throughout. It felt like a fairy tale. The officiant began the ceremony. We exchanged vows, both of us tearing up as we spoke. I felt overwhelmed with happiness, surrounded by everyone I loved, promising forever to the man of my dreams. The officiant asked if anyone had objections to our union. Standard ceremony language. No one ever actually objects. Except someone did. Sophia stood up. I turned to look at her, confused. Maybe she'd dropped something, maybe she needed to step out, but she wasn't moving toward the exit. She was facing the crowd, her chin raised, her voice clear and steady. "I object," she said, "because I'm pregnant, with Marcus's baby." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched the color drain from Marcus's face. I heard someone gasp, maybe my mother. I saw phones coming out, people starting to record, but mostly, I felt this strange, floating sensation, like I was watching everything happen to someone else. and then something clicked. I smiled. Not because I was happy, not because I was in denial, but because in that moment, everything made perfect sense. The late-night texts, the coordination meetings, the bachelorette party cancellation, the timeline obsession, the way she'd inserted herself into every aspect of our relationship, the way she'd managed our schedules, our communication, our planning. She hadn't been helping me plan my wedding, she'd been sabotaging it. I looked at Marcus, whose mouth was opening and closing like a fish. I looked at Sophia, who was now staring at me with this expression of triumph mixed with terror. I looked out at our guests, who were frozen in shock. And I kept smiling. "Well," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the silence, "that's interesting timing." I turned to the officiant, a sweet older man who looked like he wanted to disappear. "I think we'll need to pause the ceremony for a moment." I walked calmly over to Sophia. She was breathing hard, her face flushed. "Congratulations on the pregnancy," I said softly, just for her. "I hope you enjoyed planning this moment as much as you enjoyed planning the rest of my wedding." Her eyes widened. She opened her mouth to say something, but I was already walking away. I gathered my dress and walked back down the aisle, not running, not crying, just walking, like I was going to get a glass of water. Behind me, I heard voices starting, confusion, my mother calling my name, but I kept walking until I reached the bridal suite. Once inside, I sat down at the vanity and pulled out my phone. I didn't call my lawyer first, though I should have. I didn't call my parents or my sister. I called Detective Sarah Chen from the fraud division of the local police department. We'd met at a charity event months ago, bonded over terrible wine and shared stories about workplace harassment. She'd given me her card and said to call if I ever needed anything. "Sarah," I said when she answered, "it's Emma from the charity gala. I need to report a crime." While I was on the phone, I heard footsteps outside, voices, Sophia calling my name, then Marcus. I ignored them. I had work to do. You see, I'm a forensic accountant. I trace money for a living, and about 2 weeks ago, when I was doing some final budget reconciliation for wedding expenses, I'd noticed some irregularities, charges on vendors I didn't remember approving, payments to services we weren't using, a catering bill that was $3,000 higher than our contract. At the time, I thought it was administrative error. Sophia had been handling so much of the vendor communication. It made sense that wires had gotten crossed. I'd planned to sort it out after the honeymoon. But sitting in that bridal suite, listening to my would-be husband try to explain himself through the door, I realized it wasn't administrative error, it was theft. I spent the next hour on the phone with Sarah, walking through the paper trail. Sophia had created fake vendor invoices, inflated real ones, and pocketed the difference. She'd used her role as maid of honor to gain access to our joint wedding account, our vendor contracts, our payment schedules. Over the course of a year, she'd stolen nearly $15,000 from our wedding budget. The pregnancy announcement wasn't just betrayal, it was the culmination of a long con. By the time the police arrived at the venue, most of the guests had left. The ones who remained were family, standing around in uncomfortable clusters, unsure what to do. Marcus was sitting on a bench, his head in his hands. Sophia was nowhere to be seen. They found her in the parking lot, trying to leave. When they arrested her, she screamed my name, not Marcus's, mine. "Emma," she yelled as they put her in the car, "you don't understand. I did this for us. I was trying to save you." Save me from what? A marriage she'd been systematically undermining for a year? The investigation moved quickly. My documentation was thorough, and Sophia had left a digital trail that was impossible to deny. Fake invoices with her signature, bank deposits to her personal account, vendor emails she'd intercepted and redirected. She'd been so confident in her plan that she'd barely tried to cover her tracks. The affair with Marcus was just the finale. The theft was the real crime. She called me from jail, crying, "Please," she begged, "don't press charges. I'll pay it all back. It was a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. The pregnancy hormones, the stress. I wasn't myself." "Which pregnancy?" I asked, because according to the medical records the police requested, "You're not actually pregnant. That was just for dramatic effect, wasn't it?" The silence on the other end told me everything. She was charged with theft, fraud, and filing a false police report when she initially tried to claim I'd given her permission to access the wedding funds. The trial was quick. She pleaded guilty, was sentenced to 2 years probation, and ordered to pay full restitution plus damages. Marcus tried to reconcile. He showed up at my apartment with flowers, explanations, promises. He claimed Sophia had manipulated him, seduced him, that he'd been confused and weak but that he loved me. Maybe that was even true. But I wasn't interested in sorting through the wreckage of trust she'd left behind. I filed for annulment the next day. We'd never actually completed the ceremony. So legally, we were never married. Emotionally, we'd been over the moment she stood up in that chair. I kept the dress, not for sentimental reasons, but because I'd paid for it, and it was beautiful. I donated it to a non-profit that provides wedding dresses to women who can't afford them. Someone else got to have a happy ending in it. A year later, I'm doing fine, better than fine. Actually, I learned I'm stronger than I thought, more capable of standing up for myself than I'd realized. I learned that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones you need to watch most carefully. And I learned that a smile can be the most powerful weapon you have when someone tries to destroy your life in public. Sophia served her probation, paid the restitution, and moved across the country. I heard through mutual friends that she's working at a small marketing firm, keeping her head down. Marcus joined a different law firm after the scandal affected his reputation at work. He's not my problem anymore. I still believe in love, in marriage, in trusting people, but I also believe in documentation, in watching for red flags, and in the power of consequences when people think they can take advantage of your kindness. Sometimes people ask if I regret how I handled it, if I wish I'd just called off the wedding quietly, handled the betrayal privately, avoided the public spectacle. But I don't regret it. She chose to make her announcement public, dramatic, designed for maximum humiliation. She wanted an audience for my destruction. She got one for hers instead. So what do you think? Was I right to press charges, or should I have handled it differently? Let me know in the comments.